Hi, I'm Dave, and we're here to create some sourdough bread. A lot of friends have asked that I teach a class on making sourdough bread, and with our quarantine status, this seems kind of like a good opportunity for me to do that, and also for people to use the ingredients that they have around their house to make some good bread. So we're going to do a series of videos, and hopefully that'll be a culmination of 3 different sourdough options. One is the No Knead style or Tartine-style bread, which is baked in a cast iron or a ceramic pot. Another will be sandwich loaves, which we'll make in regular loaf pans, and then a free-form bread, which we'll do on a baking stone. But in order to get there, we have to create a sourdough starter. First of all, if you live in the county and you want to come by, I can give you some sourdough. Just so you can see it, this is the current state of my sourdough, and Sophia, you can come in and look at this with me if you want. So I keep this in the refrigerator so that I don't have to feed it every day, and you can see that it's kind of a shiny mess with a lot of bubbles in it. So this was used last week, so it needs to be refed before it can make new starter, or before it can make new loaves of bread. We'll get back to that in just a minute. But assuming you don't have a friend who can give you this, what we want to do is to make our own starter. And it's going to take probably 5 to 6 days for this to actually be developed enough for you to bake bread with this. And a couple things about this. This is a little tricky, but it's not difficult. It should just take you 5 minutes a day to feed your starter, and we'll talk about what that means in just a second, and to check in on it to see if it's bubbling. And then when it bubbles enough that you can see it doubling in size in 4 to 6 hours or so, that's when you're ready to make bread. But like I said, in the meantime, we're going to practice a couple things. We're going to make a straight loaf of white bread tonight and record that too. And then we'll do a kind of Jim Leahy's traditional no-knead bread recipe with a couple adjustments so that you'll be ready to use the sourdough when it's time for that. So all of these things will kind of lead to those 3 examples of what I said. So how do you create a starter? And how does this all work? So there's wild yeast everywhere, and what we're going to do is extract it from the flour that we have. And then we're going to mix it. We're going to let this sit, and the wild yeast is going to slowly start to multiply. And if you've ever seen the like dusty looking stuff on grapes, that's wild yeast, and it's in a whole bunch of different things. And people will extract it from fruits and vegetables and stuff, but we're going to pull it out of the flour that we already have. And you don't need any special flour. You could just use all-purpose flour that you have, as long as it's plain flour without any leavening agents in it. So no self-rising flour. I just happen to have a few that I really like here. So this is King Arthur bread flour. I use this all the time. I love it. I think this is Bob's Red Mill whole wheat flour. We're going to use a mix of that. And then my newest favorite flour comes from Central Milling. It's organic flour, but they have a whole bunch of different varieties. I have one that I'm going to use for pizza. We'll talk about pizza too. And this one happens to be kamut or khorasan. It's an ancient grain, a lot like spelt. You can use anything that you have. I would recommend using at least half white flour. Don't try to start with rye or wheat right away, but you can certainly add them to your mix. So what do? What's in a sourdough starter? Basically equal parts by weight of flour and water. So how do we do this? I happen to have a digital scale that I use. It's really beneficial and for me almost impossible to do without. So what I do is I put some sort of container on here and turn it on. And my scale, like most scales, will balance out the weight of this, and it will say 0. And it can change units from ounces to grams. I find that grams are easier to use. So what we're going to do is add 100 grams of flour, and I grabbed a half cup measuring cup just so you can see how inaccurate these things are. So everybody has some different way of measuring out flour, and my guess is, and I honestly didn't do this beforehand, that if I gently scoop and just kind of shake this off, what I'm hoping this is going to say is 100 grams. My guess is it's going to be less. But I want 100 grams of flour. So if I put this in, my scale now says, and Sophia can confirm this if she wants, 73 grams. So at least with my measuring tools, I'd need more than a half a cup of flour to get to 100 grams. But I'm just gonna finish this off. And if you want to zoom in, Sophia, there it is, there's 100 grams. And if I'm off by a gram or two, that's fine, whatever. So the next thing I'm going to do is add 100 grams of water, which is just under a half cup. Let's talk about water. There's nothing super magical about this, like I said, but we don't want anything that's going to kill our starter. And the things that will kill our starter are salt, heat, and crazy chemicals. So this is just filtered water from our fridge. I'm going to zero out my scale, and I've used the 0 button on this so much that I actually broke it. So I'm going to actually cheat and push the 0 button with this little pencil that I have. So I'm zeroed out, and now I'm going to put in 100 grams of water. 97. There we go. That's actually 102 grams, which is perfectly fine. So with this, I'm done with my scale for today. So I'm just going to mix this up. And I like to use a glass bowl, as you can see from my real starter. And I just got some of my flour on my scale. So it's like really thick pancake batter, certainly nowhere near the consistency of a dough, so this is 50% water and 50% flour, right, by weight. The dough that we're going to be making is more like somewhere between 60 and 70% water to flour. So for every 100 grams of flour, we're going to have 60 to 70 grams of water. Anyway, that's it. All we're going to do now is cover this. I'll clean that up after the video stops. With something that's more or less airtight, but as this expands in later days, this would still allow some of the gases to come off of it, carbon dioxide, alcohol. So that's it. What do we do with this? So this sits at room temperature for a day or 2 days. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to leave this for 2 days, and tomorrow I'm probably going to stir it just to kind of move the flour around and let any wild yeast that has started to work touch some other flour within this mixture. So 2 days at room temperature, then we're going to take it out, we're going to throw away half of it, and then we're going to add 50 more grams of flour and 50 more grams of water, and then we'll be at 150 grams for the whole thing. And then we're just going to wait. And as it starts to bubble, we know that we're starting to get what we're looking for. So that's about it for now. We'll check back with this in a couple days, and I'll show you how to refeed it. We'll actually feed my sourdough culture at the same time, and you can see that starting a starter and maintaining a starter are exactly the same thing. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you when we start to make some white bread. Thanks.